outline some basic ideas behind Jewish meditation and the structure of the worlds that is a pathway in meditation, and then to teach some techniques for accessing a higher state of consciousness through deep breathing, through body relaxation, through guided meditation, through chanting, through using some of Hashem's names, the names that are mutar, are permitted to us. We also did some guided meditations that were designed to get us in touch with a different relationship to ourselves, a relationship that takes us deeper to our true selves, to get closer to that, to feel that sense of that other higher, greater me that's behind, in the case of the metaphor, the princess in the tower, that metaphor for our higher soul. So we've done a lot of those different types of meditations with some theory behind it and different ideas about creation, the idea of the tzimtzum, rishon, the empty place in which God made in himself in order to create. And that's a metaphor for all of us, that when we need to create, we have to have first an empty space inside. Like a woman, first she has to have an empty space inside to create a baby. So too, Hashem had to do the same thing. And that's one of the reasons why a woman makes the bracha in the morning, Shasani karotzono. It made me like his will, because like his will is like he is. A great large part of Hashem has feminine aspects that we're trying to get in touch with. For men it's even harder. I'm sure Yonatan knows. For men it's sometimes harder to get in touch, whether it's by meditation or cell phone. And because men have more, well, let's put it this way, we're made with different hardware. And women are more heart-based, and I think men are more mind-based. And so when you're more mind-based, it's harder to get to the feelings in the heart. And especially when we want to have strong feelings towards Hashem. Whereas women are more centered in the heart and in the feelings, and therefore it's easier for a lot of women to meditate and get in touch with that. Tonight I wanted to talk about an idea from Sefer Yetzirah. And it's another way of explaining and talking about the Sfirot, the 10 main filters or channels of Hashem's light. But in a context of meditation, it is also the space we go when we leave here. Okay? When we leave the realm of my immediate physical senses, where do we go? Well, you close my eyes so that I'm going into a dark space. And I close my ears, and so it's a much more silent space. Those are two little doorways that we have to close, the ears and the eyes, in order to go within. Now, what it says in Sefer Yetzirah is like this: that God created a 10 continuum spiritual realm. Now, a continuum means we go from one extreme to another. Continuum means that at one extreme you have the ultimate chesed, Avram Avinu, right? And then at the other extreme, you have, the biggest Rasha. I don't know whoever we want to pick from the book. The Mishnah and Pirkei Avot brings down Bilam, a Rasha, as a comparative to the Talmidim of Elu, or not like the Talmidim of Elu. But there's an idea of a continuum between chesed and between cruelty. Now, these 10 continuums that the Sefer Yetzirah describes correspond to, and they call them omek, a depth of good and a depth of evil. So that's one of the continuums. Evil and good. Now, evil is a concept. We know what evil is, and good is a concept. But in the spiritual realm, they're more than concepts. They are active, real powers. And good and evil will not stay together. It's like water and oil. They will never mix. Okay, so that's one omek. Then there's other, what do they call amakim? And omek means the depth. But of course, why is it called a depth? in the Sefer Yetzirah and not like a sphera. It could be called a channel. It could be called a tower. It could be called a palace. There's a lot of different nicknames that the Zohar gives to these powers. And the nicknames are there designed to give us a handle on what we're talking about. So an omek is like, an emek is a valley. But an omek, it suggests to us the idea that when you go into a meditative state, a state of great relaxation, you have this sense of falling, of sinking, going down. That sense of falling is also called going into the well, right? There's a reason why Be'er Sheva is called Be'er Sheva, the seventh well. We know there's lots of Torah reasons why that. But one of the ideas of Be'er Sheva, the seventh well, it's the well of kingship. But it's also this idea of going down into a well to get the water. And visually that also can take place. That's a sign of transcendence. If you ever have a sense of going into the water or falling, free falling, that's actually a sense, the way the soul feeds back to the mind that you're leaving your normal frame of reference, normal frame of perspective. Okay? So this can happen in meditation. Another example, there's called an emek of light and an emek of darkness. Okay, light, easy metaphor, right? Hashem is light and everything else is down from there. But when we talk about light and dark, again, we're talking about these places in the mind. Now, when we close our eyes and try to meditate in the beginning, I feel like I'm in a very small space. And a perfect metaphor for that is like a coal miner who starts with a new mountain. And he's got to dig into the mountain. And he's after the coal, or maybe he's after the diamond in the bottom, if he's lucky. This mountain is actually my consciousness that has not yet been opened up. And the more that I dig into the mountain, the more I create an internal space to be. Now, to be what? Ultimately, to be alone with Hashem. That's why in this book, which is 500 years old, about meditation, he talks about hisbodedus, but it's not the Breslov modern-day idea of hisbodedus. You go out to the forest and talk to Hashem. In Kabbalah, hisbodedus means isolating myself in my mind. But to do that, I have to have a place to do it. And how do I create that space is through speech and desire. Every time that I talk to Hashem, I'm taking a little bit out of the mountain, making the room inside a little bigger. Every time if I cry to Hashem, halavai, then that is like a much more powerful, deeper opening up of this internal theater. And that's really what it is, because as the mind gets cleared out, it opens more, and more and more, until you have this palace inside your heart, inside your mind. Now I know this sounds all very abstract and strange, but the more you practice it, the more it happens. And what you're actually creating, when you're creating your inner theater, that inner place to see Hashem's name, or to have to have a vision, to think about the Beit HaMikdash, that opening of the space is exactly what Hashem did in the beginning of creation. He created these 10 traits, right? And why it's called an emek, we said, one reason why it's called an emek. But the idea is that it's an emek, it's a continuum, so the top is Keter. The Keter is the crown, the bottom is Malchut. But that's all in holiness. We have the opposite powers on the other side as well. So there's an extreme of the crown of goodness, and then there's a thing called the crown of evil. So that creates for us another continuum of the idea of what it means to have a crown, and to use the crown properly or not properly. Okay, but nonetheless, what we're trying to describe here is this opening up of the inner place in the mind where I can actually go to be alone. Now this sounds very hard and maybe distant and foreign to most of us, but what we see is that if we allow ourselves to feel, I know for me, I have to allow myself to feel how far I am from Hashem. I have to allow myself to feel that. Wow, I'm far from Hashem. And I close my eyes and I can't think about Hashem, and I'm thinking about everything else in my brain. and I'm thinking about what I have to do today, what I did yesterday, and what I'm going to do tomorrow, and the kids, and everything, all of our responsibilities are constantly kind of intruding into the mind, and they don't let you be alone. And that spells a lack of peace. And what we're after is this sense of peace. But how can I be at peace when my mind is constantly under attack or under barrage? So, Rabbi Nachman explains in Likutei Moharan that every time you cry out and long for Hashem, those are two things, crying out and longing together, you actually cause the mind to reach up out of itself and strike what's called the Keter, or a transcendental light. You actually cause the mind to reach up out of itself, strike an upper realm, and then fall back down. It's called Tisha Hechalot, right? You probably remember the Torah, maybe you've seen it with Likutei Moharan, where he describes this it's amazing thing, because it's like we have to long for Hashem, rise up, knock on the door, put the chisel and the hammer into the mountain, take out a piece, and then we fall back. And every time we do it, we open up a little bit more of that space to be alone with Hashem. And that's why Rabbi Nachman said, at the end of his career, he says, I can be alone with 10,000 people. Utterly, completely alone in his mind. But that means that you're sitting with 10,000 people, and you're not worrying about anything else that's going on around you, not what anybody's saying, thinking, you're doing. And you're totally alone with Hashem in Dveiku, just like you're alone in the forest. Right? Another way, a good way of duplicating the experience is swimming. If you go underwater and just stay underwater, that floating experience is also a metaphor for the beginning of having that kind of alone space. Because when you're underwater, your ears, you can hear very much less, obviously. And if your eyes are closed, obviously, you're not going to see. But it's a nice way to get a sense of the experience that we're talking about, is floating underwater. Okay. So now, when we're describing this continuum, these 10 continuums, we understand that we are actually a vehicle that moves along them. I do something good, I move closer to the ultimate good. I do something opposite, I move away from the opposite of the ultimate good. And this is true for all the different traits. So the same thing for the trait of Netzach. Netzach means victory. There's the guy that will do anything to win, and he'll even kill you to win, kill himself to win. That's the ultimate example of the fallen aspect of Netzach, victory. And then there's the guy that will, like Moshe Rabbeinu, the Kabbalah aligns Moshe Rabbeinu to this quality. There's the idea of the only to win for Hashem. I will do anything for God's victory. That's the only victory I'm interested in. So you have this ultimate selfless aspect of the quality to the ultimate selfish aspect of the quality. And then you take any other quality in the book. You know, you have Yosef Atzadik. Yosef Atzadik is the ultimate quality of Yesod. So on that line, you have he's the absolute example of loyalty and purity, sexual purity especially. And then a person goes along this spectrum, you get to the other end, we know what that's about. But again, in the spiritual realm, these are not just ideas. Here, they're ideas that we can talk about. But in the spiritual realm, if we stripped away all of our physical senses and we were just talking souls, as we were speak to each other, we would see letters emanating from our mouths. We would see a person where they're holding spiritually. The way they describe it in Olam Haba is that a person goes to the world to come with your good deeds attached to you, and then they see who you are from the beginning to the end. In other words, anybody who's already up there. So the point is that those qualities and traits are not just concepts or ideas that we can talk about. They're real living things. Now that sounds like, so what? What does that mean? How does that help me? Well, for example, I'll tell you how it helps us. For example, love. Everybody wants love. Everybody wants to feel loved. Everybody would like to have love for others. We know that love is one of the prime motivators in human beings. But I wake up in the morning and I don't have love. My heart's closed. What happened? I know there's love in the universe. I declare it every morning. The Torah tells me to love. The Torah commands me to love. The Torah tells me Hashem loves the tzaddikim, etc., etc., etc. But I don't feel it. Where is it?